Alright, Mariah Carey, Queen, we've got a lot of great artists that have made songs about fantasies before. And so we're going over onto the NHL's Instagram account and talking about their own fantasy breakout candidates for the 22-23 season. Now, spoiler alert, we're not going over all these guys. There are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 names listed on their Instagram post right here. But what I really wanted to do was focus on the two Western Canadian guys that made themselves an appearance on this list. This is the post that I'm talking about from 2 days ago. The NHL is saying to look out for these guys to reach another level this season. Who do you have your eye on? And of course, the title of the image that is posted, NHL Fantasy lists the top breakout candidates for the 22-23 season. Today we're going to be talking about the 5th-ranked breakout candidate, Vasili Podkolzin of the Vancouver Canucks, as well as the 2nd overall candidate, Evan Bouchard of the Edmonton Oilers. Actually, you know what? I want to go over the full list just to go out there and put it in stone here. 10th overall, it's Arthur Kaliev of the LA Kings. 9th overall, Cole Sillinger of the Blue Jackets. 8th overall, you have yourselves Oliver Wahlstrom on the New York Islanders. The 7th overall spot belongs to Dawson Mercer of the Devils. 6th overall is Seth Jarvis of the Hurricanes. Man, really? That guy already is really good, so, I mean, him breaking out and being even better is kind of scary to me. Vasili Podkolzin of the Canucks at 5th overall, Bowen Byram of the Avalanche at 4th. Hey, guess what? He was drafted 4th overall, so that's kind of cool. Alexander Georgiev, 3rd overall in the Avalanche. Yeah, recent Darcy Kemper replacement there, eh? Evan Bouchard is 2nd overall from the Oilers, and then Spencer Knight of the Panthers is 1st. So, let's go over the two Western Canadian guys and talk about how they could potentially break out, starting out with Vasili Podkolzin. Now, this is like the 3rd time we've talked about Pod on the channel in the context of him getting better and improving and this and that. We talked about the comments that were made by the NHL fantasy guy saying that Podkolzin could be better than Pettersson and Brock sometime down the line. We had talked about the comments made by JT Miller saying that Podkolzin has an absolutely sky-high ceiling, his shot, his work ethic, his humility, it's all there. And I'm kind of really starting to doubt myself in my own assessment of Podkolzin as a hockey player because, like, heading into this season, I was kind of skeptical that he would be anywhere near the territory of an Elias Pettersson type guy. Pettersson, at his best, can be a point-per-game player. He might be able to hit 100 points one day. Heck, JT Miller had 99, so if he could get that amount, I could say that Pettersson has that sort of potential as well. But when we see everybody saying that Podkolzin might be this, he could be that good, he's sometime down the line going to be better than Pettersson, like, I really start to say to myself, have I been wrong about my assessment of this guy this entire time? Like, he made the NHL in 21-22 and had 26 points in 79 games played. Next season, I would not be surprised if Podkolzin maybe gets like 40, 50 points. I would be surprised, however, if he goes out there and he gets 55, if he gets 60 or 70. The way some of these people are talking about Podkolzin makes it seem like he is like on the cusp. He is almost there to being, like, better than Brock or something. Like, I said this already in the previous video, I'll say it again here, if Podkolzin is that good, if he becomes the second coming of Elias Pettersson, you have Pettersson and Podkolzin, dynamic duo, if he is that good, if he posts up 70, 80 points in a season sometime down the line, then hey, I absolutely would love to see that. I would not tell the hockey gods, yeah, no, sorry, scratch that, I don't want that anymore. Absolutely not, give it to us. I want to see Podkolzin be the best version of himself, and I would love to see the guy go out there and score a heck of a lot of points. But there's a difference between saying that it would be nice to happen and saying that I see it happening in the future, right? Like, next season, I mean, Podkolzin getting 55 points would surprise me a lot. But for people writing about NHL fantasy breakout candidates, it appears that, hey, they think Podkolzin is a more valuable, immediate, short-term option than a guy like Seth Jarvis, for example. And Seth Jarvis, look at what he was able to do this recent season with the Carolina Hurricanes as a rookie, for crying out loud. He's only 20 years old, and he went out there and had 40 points in 68 games played. Do the math over 82, and Seth Jarvis was on pace for 48 total points. If Podkolzin is ranked to go higher than a guy that had 48 points last season over 82 games, like, I don't know what to say. I honestly am kind of surprised about that. But at the end of the day, if it happens, then I will be very pleasantly surprised. It's just apparent that the NHL fantasy writers, JT Miller himself, and maybe some of you as well, won't be. if he goes out there and he has a 60-point campaign, then I'm going to slap myself silly on the back and give everybody else props, because if I were to place money on it, I don't know if I would necessarily make that bet. But either way, Podkolzin, we've talked about him a few times. Let's go over onto the other guy that is being listed as the second breakout candidate in the NHL, Evan Bouchard of the Oilers. Now, he's an interesting one as well, because in 81 games played, Bouchard had 43 points. He also had 9 points in 16 games in the playoffs. Now, if they're saying that this guy can be a breakout candidate after being a 40-point defenseman at 22 years old, then I don't know what the heck the ceiling is for this player sometime down the line. We've always known from his time in the OHL that Bouchard was a purely offensively capable defender. There were many issues with his stride, his back-checking, his work ethic, etc., etc., but when the offense needed going, Evan Bouchard would be the guy pumping up the engine. And it's why he was taken 10th overall by the Oilers. He's a guy that was really able to find himself a solid power play quarterbacking role, playing his first full season in the NHL, getting this amount of points. Now, when it comes to Tyson Berry, because he's also a player that the Oilers have, that is a right-handed guy, power play quarterback, etc., etc., he can get a lot of points. He was the top point producer amongst defensemen in the shortened 56-game campaign, I believe, something like that. There is going to be somewhat of a passing of the torch eventually, because Tyson Berry is not the youngest guy in the world. Evan Bouchard had 40-something points as a 22-year-old, and if that passing of the torch is going to start happening this season, then man, there's a reason why he's being listed as a breakout candidate on the NHL fantasy website here. This guy, if he's manning the power play with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, he's getting, let's say, every third pass. It's Bouchard to McDavid, over to Draisaitl, back to Bouchard, maybe to the Nuge, and then Bouchard gets it back. McDavid shoots, scores. If you have a system like that, I could definitely see Bouchard racking up the points again and again and again, in a similar fashion to how Quinn Hughes was able to do it with the Vancouver Canucks last season, where pretty much every other pass was Quinn to Miller to Quinn to Miller to Bo to Brock to goal. Like, one of Miller or Hughes would always get a point on whatever power play goal the Canucks scored, because they just happened to be the guy that received every other pass. Bouchard might be in a similar position, and I definitely wouldn't discredit the Oilers to try something like that out, especially seeing how comfortable he had gotten this previous season in the NHL. And so when it comes to point production and ceiling, like, come on, McDavid and Draisaitl, you can't go out there and deny these guys any speck of respect. So for Evan Bouchard playing on their power play, assuming that he gets that role, I wouldn't be surprised if he hits like 55, maybe 60 points in an NHL season. And I know it's crazy because I just went out there ripping on Podkolzin because he's a player that I'm kind of like lower on than other NHL people seem to be, and I just said, oh, if he gets 60 points, I'd be surprised. But for Evan Bouchard, contextually speaking, I could definitely see that happening for him and the hockey team that he is on. So, I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of a bad Canucks fan right now. Maybe for Podkolzin, I'm just kind of taking a look at what we had seen, and I'm not looking at what we're going to be able to see as time goes on. Obviously, I'm not in the practices, I'm not in the locker room like JT Miller is, for example, so when JT Miller goes out there and says there's a sky-high ceiling for Vasili Podkolzin, I definitely don't want to be the guy to go out there and say that he's wrong. It's just, when you have some writers on NHL.com, for example, saying that he's going to be better than Pettersson, like, dude, if Podkolzin is better than Pettersson, I mean, I'd like that, but I wouldn't say that I'm expecting it. So, talk in the comments all your thoughts. If you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, what are your thoughts on Vasili Podkolzin? I know we've had this discussion, like, this is the third video now already where we've talked about Podkolzin in this type of way, but let me know your thoughts either way, all your ideas and opinions on Podkolzin and his development, the progression he has had over the past few years, and what you had seen out of him in this previous 2022 NHL season. Also, Oilers fans, thoughts on Evan Bouchard? What did you think about him in his first full campaign as an Oiler? Do you think the torch is going to be passed over to him from Tyson Berry sometime down the line? And furthermore, what are your thoughts about the entire John Klingberg thing, too? This is like a completely out of left field topic, but we did talk about John Klingberg as a potential Oilers acquisition in a sign and trade scenario with the Montreal Canadiens, and I kind of said initially that it would be a pretty difficult thing to pull off because you already had Berry and you already had Bouchard. What more for getting another right-handed power play quarterback and defenseman in John Klingberg? Why would you want to do that? Like, seriously, it wasn't really something that I thought had too much value, so you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about that entire conversation as well, but I hope you enjoyed this video, Juraj 99, and bye.